Show presented by Mortgage Right. I'm your host, John Sarianides, and as always, I'm joined by my partners, Kevin Stone and Adam Kirchen. Gents, how are you doing this evening as we begin Showcase Week here in New
Oh
England?
yeah,
Doing good.
yeah,
How are you guys?
doing good, doing good.
Good, good. Excited for Showcase Week, man. And before we get started here, I want to tip my hat to our Tony Catalino, who did a great job
Awesome.
today in Connecticut. Unfortunately, and I had a lot of people reach out to me asking us if we were going to go to their school. I had another writer lined up, but he didn't have transportation to get to the southwestern part of Connecticut. But we were able to get to Choate. We were able to get to Cheshire, St. Thomas More, and Avon Old Farms. Tony's also at Springfield tonight, Springfield Central. And then tomorrow we've got 6 spots covered for you. Adam will be at St. Seb's. Kevin will be at Dexter Southfield and Belmont Hill. I'll be at Tabor and Milton Academy. And our Jake Hamilton will be at BBNN tomorrow night. So we try to get to as many as we can, but no one covers the showcases like we do. So as always, follow Tony, follow us for all of your Showcase Week news. It's become, an annual event here now in New England, and it's expanded to New York and New Jersey. This is an event that gets national attention, and we're excited to cover it for you. Now, before we get started here tonight, I do want to remind you that we are brought to you by Mortgage Right. Give our good friend Herb Devine a call at 781-254-2846. If you are thinking of selling your current home or purchasing your first home, Herb can help you with a variety of programs that are out there. He can help you navigate the purchasing process. It's not easy. You need a lot of experience. Experience matters in this process. Herb has it. With over 27 years of experience, he's one of the top loan officers and lenders in the region. Again, give him a call at 781-254-2846. He and his team are available anytime, including nights and weekends. All right, gentlemen, let's start off with the Patriots. The Patriots, like we do every week. And of course, rookie minicamp took place this past weekend over at Gillette Stadium. It was our first opportunity to take a look at the rookie class, as well as the undrafted free agents that the Patriots brought in, and some additional undrafted free agents that they also brought in. There was a total of about 30, 35 guys in attendance this weekend. And it was our first look at first-round pick Drake May, as well as wide receivers Jalen Polk and Javon Baker. I was not able to attend on Saturday, but Kevin, you were, and I want to start there. What were some of your impressions of what you saw on Saturday?
Not a whole lot of competitive stuff, as you would imagine. They kind of have to follow certain rules and all that, but it was good just to be out there and just be covering football again. You guys both know how it works. You're up on the hill, and it's just it was a nice little kind of preview of what's to come in training camp, but not a whole ton. I mean, Polk and Baker, they looked apart. Drake May looked apart. Joe Milton, it's funny, he absolutely hums the ball, but he does it at the worst time possible. 5-yard comebacks, they're bouncing off guys' hands because it's just the ball is thrown too hard. So he's going to have to work on his touch a bit. And a couple of receivers stood out. And again, they signed 4 guys today as well, 4 tryout guys. One of the guys that stood out to me was a running back, Jennings. I'm looking at the roster right now, trying to find his name. Where is it? Sorry. Terrell Jennings. Sorry. He stood out.
Show prep has always been your strength.
Always. I use a yellow highlighter like an idiot. I can't see it. He was good. He was quick. Another receiver, David Willis. He was good as well. Again, it's hard to really take much from these just because I timed it. It was exactly 50 minutes from the time they stretched to the time they hit the hill for conditioning. So mostly just drills and stuff like that. But biggest takeaway for me was Mayo's press conference beforehand. He walks up and he's joking with the reporters and, talking about his clothing and the weather. And it is definitely a different feeling there, to say the least. But again, it's just so hard to take anything from it. And you guys maybe would have looked at things differently. I've seen people reporting about May's delivery. I wasn't necessarily seeing his hitch that I've been reading about or anything like that. It's hard to focus on that kind of stuff when it's not real football. So overall, good to be out there, but just not a whole ton to take away, except Joe Milton and Drake May are big guys, and they throw the ball harder than Mac. That's about it.
Yeah, I think it's cool. I mean, you're right. Like these, you can't really take too much away. They're not doing a ton of stuff, but like I think in that respect, you kind of want to see how somebody like Drake May is interacting with all the other guys there. How he's taking the coaching. Uh, there's not much you can see, but it's just hey, it's their first part as a New England Patriot. This is their first stuff. So you want to see how they work, like I said, how they interact with each other. And I think all eyes are on Drake May. I mean, I feel like it's a bigger deal than when Mac got here in some respects, not all, because Mac was, earlier. But this is a big deal. Everybody wants to see what they've got in Drake May. And so, people are gonna big time overreact to everything that he does, and even in a thing like this. But I think people just want to see what he looks like.
Yeah, just to the point you made about him interacting with teammates, I did notice that. They all seem to joke around, him and Joe Milton. Receivers really seem to get along. Again, we're somewhat far away, so you can't necessarily hear conversations, but it all seemed like guys are getting along. And there's 40 players there just sort of getting their NFL feet wet. So, and it was good to see John Pupil and Vinny DePalma there as well, two BC guys. Vinny obviously on the coaching side, and John Pupil was one of the safeties there. But yeah, to that point, the interactions were, you noticed those at the very least. So that was good.
Yeah, again, I think that a lot was made of nothing. As you said, Kevin, it's an hour workout. I mean, we haven't had this kind of access, so it's great that the organization sees enough value in these rookie mini camps that they're willing to make it available to the media. So we appreciate that. I don't want to sound selfish from that standpoint, but the idea that we're going to sit here on May 13th and take enough away from one rookie minicamp practice to start to judge Drake May and to analyze him and to analyze the receivers and to analyze these other guys, I think, quite frankly, is ridiculous. I think it's ridiculous. I think it's stupid. I think it speaks to the over-analysis that exists in our industry today, that we have to sit there now and draw conclusions about Drake May from two rookie minicamp practices. Give me an effing break, people. Okay, enough. Like, really, talk to me the second or third week of training camp. Then we can have a real conversation about Drake May and where he's at in his development. But are we really asking Gerard Mayo now where he's at in his development? What are his early impressions? What early impressions? Honestly, guys, there's no, like you said it, Kevin, and I couldn't agree with you more. It's not a real practice. They're out there doing drills. It's extended individual. That's all it is. What first impression is he supposed to have? Okay, so the kid's got a great attitude. It's new to him. He's fun. He's exciting. He's happy. He's getting along with everyone. That's about all you're going to take away from this. He can throw the ball. Well, you already knew that. So this idea that we have to sit there and break down every single one of his throws and talk about it from a 1 hour practice where you didn't put him in game-like situations is ridiculous to me. And it speaks of the fact that we will go to any length to find coverage. In other words, we will go to any length to find a story to write about something. And I understand that, and I appreciate that. That's our job in the media. But I think at the end of the day, let's pump the brakes on analyzing Drake May and his rookie minicamp performance. It's over the top. It's ridiculous. And we're not there yet, folks. Relax. We're going to get there. Give it a week or two after. Heck, if you want to analyze his performance after mandatory minicamp next month, go for it. Knock yourself out. Do it. We're all probably going to do it anyway. But to do it after a rookie minicamp practice, I don't know. I just think it's insane. I don't see the need for it. Am I wrong there? I mean,
well, here's what I'll say though, is that writers and people who cover the team understand how much everybody wants to know about this guy. So it's sort of like, supply and demand. like there's such a high demand for Drake May information that of course they're gonna, you know, cover the heck out of whatever
And
he
I
does.
understand that, Adam, and I'm not disagreeing with you, nor am I saying that there's anything wrong with that. I guess all I'm saying is it necessary after one hour practice to be microanalyzing this guy? You know, I wrote about this today about how Mayo basically did what he should have done when he was asked about May. He basically said, "Pump the brakes. He has a lot to work on. He needs a lot of support. Who's going to support him. Here are the guys who are going to coach him up and be in his ear." That's what he should have said. I mean, I don't think as a coach you can take that much away from 2 1-hour practices. You know what I mean? Like I just think, and I listen, like I said, I understand what you're saying, and I agree with you that people are craving this. They want this information. They want the content. I just think we have to keep things in perspective. It was Mother's Day weekend. We're not really going to know what this cat is all about until we get into camp. Then we'll get a better sense of what he is as a player.
No, and I will say, honestly, now that we're talking through this, one of the bigger takeaways for me is how many coaches were out there on the field. There was more than players there. And the roster that they gave us, I mean, I'm looking at it now, there's got to be 35, 40 names on this list. So that was kind of intriguing as well. There was a lot of coaches just sort of standing around, not doing anything. So I'm curious to see how certain things get delegated. The only real, and I guess you could put real in quotations, football we got was 2 drives of 7-on-7. You know, one for Drake and one for Milton. And Milton was throwing the ball behind guys. So you're right. It's hard to take anything away. I saw a few guys were charting May's throws. Like, I'm not going to go there, but it's a wild move. But honestly, I think you'll know more with OTAs just because you have real players there. Like, these are all rookies. We haven't even seen Drake May take a snap with David Andrews yet. Like, that's the stuff we'll end up being able to, we'll still overanalyze, but at least then you'll see him interacting with current Patriots. So, yeah, people need to pump the brakes until at least OTAs and minicamp in mid-June.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I just think, to me, we're going to have plenty of time to do all that. You know what I mean? And again, I know we're at that time of the year now where we desperately need as much content as we can get. We'll get there. But I just think overanalyzing the throws that he made in a 50-minute practice, I mean, again, to each their own, I just think that's absurd. You are watching / listening to the New England Football Show. I'm your host, John Sarianides. As always, I'm joined by my partners, Kevin Stone and Adam Kirkchin. As always, I do want to remind you that we are brought to you by Mortgage Right. Give our good friend Herb Devine a call, 781-254-2846. Or you can shoot him an email at herb@mortgageright.com. He and his team are available anytime, including nights and weekends. Good friend Kevin Mahoney joins the show. We need some Zappy. I don't know about that. I'm good with less Zappy in my life.
Yeah, me too.
It'll be interesting to see, though, and of course we'll talk about it ad nauseum next month after the mandatory mini camp and in training camp. But it'll be interesting to see how he fits into this equation, because they did release a quarterback last week in Nathan Rourke, but they still have 4 quarterbacks on the roster. So we shall see. Of course, Wednesday night is the NFL schedule release show. And as you can imagine, you've already got schedules leaking all over the place. I mean, it amazes me, a multi-billion-dollar corporation, arguably the number 1 sports league in the world, and you can't keep this thing under wraps. I mean, you're seeing people tweeting out their team schedules or portions of team schedules. It's ridiculous. I mean, this is like the worst kept secret in sports. And part of me thinks that the NFL probably wants it this way because it keeps them in the news cycle.
Yes, 100%.
Right?
I think
that's what they're all about. That's why they have to have one event per month so that they can stay relevant and top of mind when it comes to sports. But there is a schedule out there that is supposedly the 2024 schedule of our New England Patriots. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to just quickly rattle it off to you guys and tell me what you think, okay? All right, so assuming this is the schedule, and again, we'll find out on Wednesday night. Week 1, they open on the road at Tennessee. Week 2, they come back home to host the LA Chargers in the home opener at Gillette. Week 3, Aaron Rodgers and the New York Jets come to town. Remember, last season they closed with the Jets at Foxborough. Week 4, they're playing a Thursday night football game at Chicago. That'll be a tough game. Then they go on the road week 5. They're at Buffalo in the first of 2 meetings against the Bills. Now, what's interesting is between weeks 4 and 10, they only have 2 home games. All right. They come home week 6 for the Dolphins. Now, this is one that I think is, I don't want to say it's a mistake, but we'll have to wait and see what it looks like on Wednesday night. But week 7, they're playing at Jacksonville, but that game's going to be played in London, and it's supposed to be on Monday Night Football. I don't know how that's going to work. Week 8, they have a bye, according to this schedule. Then they hit the West Coast for 2 weeks. And I think we had seen last week they had petitioned the NFL to play the 49ers and Cardinals in back-to-back weeks. Well, the league granted them their wish. Week 9, they're at San Francisco. Week 10, they're at Arizona. And this is also listed as a possible Thursday night game. We'll see. They come back home week 11 and 12 for back-to-back home games against the LA Rams and the Colts. Both should be pretty good tests. Week 13, they go to the Jets. Then they come back home week 14 and 15 when they host C.J. Stroud and the Houston Texans. And then they host the Seattle Seahawks, the Mike McDonald-led Seattle Seahawks. Then week 16, they go to Cincinnati. Come back home week 17 for the Bills. And week 18, the envy of all Patriot fans and media alike. Week 18, they go to Miami the second weekend in January to close out the season against the Dolphins. Stone, I think we might want to consider credentials for that one. I'm not going to lie. Get the hell out of this cold hellhole. So I know I kind of read it to you guys rapid fire there. If you remember it, just some initial thoughts on what could be their potential 2024 schedule.
The game that I'm kind of looking forward to is with the Bears, because the Bears will probably, I'm guessing, will be starting Caleb Williams.
Oh, Matt Eberflus announced as much over the weekend. It chapped Kevin Stone. He was clamoring for more competition.
But and then I don't know if May will be starting yet. I'm assuming they're going to start with Brissett.
Yeah.
And see how things go. Those first few weeks
could be around when we see him if Brissett struggles out of the gate.
Yeah, but can you imagine May versus Williams, like the quarterback battle from this draft class? I think that would be really cool.
John, what did you say that gap was? Was it weeks 4 to 10?
Yeah, so from weeks 4 to 10, they only play 2 home games. Week 6 against Miami, and actually, yeah, so from weeks 4 to 10, I take that back. They only have 1 home game. It's week 6 against Miami. Their bye is in that stretch as well.
So the way my mind works, I immediately thought of our college coverage for those weekends. It's just how nice it'll be to not have to do.
Let's break down the schedule instead of breaking down our college schedule.
That's what my head immediately
went. What people want to hear, Stone.
No, but it's immediately where I started thinking. Any holiday games in there as well? Or no?
I don't have the dates.
Okay.
And I think that this will be pretty accurate.
Yeah.
Obviously, we'll get the dates probably before Wednesday night.
So look, they're no longer the attraction in primetime. We learned that last year when they lost that Chiefs game, but I'm sure there'll be, some intriguing storylines that networks will pick up with them and stuff like that. But I guess no real surprises. I'm happy to hear the Buffalo is early in the season. Maybe we can get to that game instead of having to travel, in a blizzard in December or January, those last few weeks. And other than that, yeah, I'm hoping we get to some more road games this year. We'll have to talk about Miami, but I guess nothing kind of jumps out at me besides that gap. And again, my head immediately went to our college coverage, which is probably a me problem.
It is a you problem. Overall, based on what I read to you, I should say, not what I read you, what I read to you, is this a tough schedule in your eyes?
God, yeah, absolutely. With a brand new head coach and who knows who quarterback? Yeah, absolutely. But again, I also think this team's going to be better than people think too.
I do think it's tough just because they're still coming back. They're still bouncing back. I think any schedule would be tough for this team. I do think they can grab a few wins here. I don't know. It's still too early to sort of say how they do against it, maybe, but I don't think they're. I don't necessarily see a winning season or anything like that with this schedule. I mean, like some of these teams, like they get the Bengals, the Niners, some of these are pretty good teams. That even the Houston game,
Well, I was
maybe,
going to say the AFC South is tough,
yeah,
and that's who they're playing this year. That's
yeah,
one of the divisions they're playing. So
yeah. So
it it's pretty tough. I think it's a pretty tough schedule. I mean, you open against a Tennessee team that has a new head coach in Brian Callahan, will be much improved. Really, they went all in this offseason and upgrading that roster. They spent a bunch of money in free agency. They also were able to fill some holes in the draft. Will Levis is going to be the big question mark for them at quarterback. But you got to go to Tennessee. You got to go to Jacksonville, who, let's face it, is a playoff contender. I know they were disappointing last year, but I expect them to bounce back. Houston Texans, I think you can make the argument they're a Super Bowl contender. They come here, according to this, on week 14. That's going to be a tough game. The other division you're playing is the NFC West. You got to go to San Francisco, arguably the best team in the NFC, probably the Super Bowl favorite in the conference. You have to go to Arizona, who's going to be tough, much improved. I thought Jonathan Gannon did a really nice job with them last year. They'll be even better with the addition of Marvin Harrison and other picks. They did a really good job in this year's draft. They'll be better. Then listen, the Seahawks are no bargain, and neither are the Rams. The Rams were a playoff team last year. If Matthew Stafford stays healthy, they'll once again be in the hunt to be a playoff team again. Could be a dark horse Super Bowl contender. They will be a tough matchup here at home later on in the season. And then that week 2 matchup, Jim Harbaugh and the Chargers come to town. Of course, the Chargers came to town last year and beat the Patriots 6-0 in one of the ugliest games you'll ever see. Probably the ugliest game played on that field since King Philip lost to North Andover 6-0 in 2018. I know I was there. But I think it's one of those things where when you look at this schedule, your bye's kind of in the middle. It's not an ideal. For me, I've always felt you're better off having the bye later in the season. It's smack dab in the middle. Probably not the most ideal bye, if you will, from a week perspective. Then, of course, you got the AFC East, which is much improved. Obviously, you've got the Bills. You're going to play them twice. You're going to play Miami twice. But then you got to play the Jets twice. And I think it's safe to say that the Jets are no longer going to be chalk here. It's not a guaranteed win. Aaron Rodgers is back. They've had a great offseason. They're better than the Patriots on paper. They'll have the coaching advantage, although you know my feelings on Rob Saleh. I'm not a big fan of his. But this is a really tough schedule, in my opinion. And I think, Adam, you bring up a really good point. Any schedule is tough when you're going into the season with a first-year head coach. So that's something that we need to keep in mind here. First-year head coach, brand new offensive staff, young quarterback. You're bringing back a veteran quarterback. A lot of turnover on the offensive side of the ball. There's going to be some growing pains here. Any schedule would be tough, but I think this one in particular is tough. We will have full coverage of the schedule release on Wednesday night. Stone will be on it. I'll be on it. We don't have the recruiting visit or the coaches chat this week, so we'll be able to break it all down for you and micro-analyze it like we do everything when it comes to the New England Patriots. I don't know if we're going to go as far as analyzing everything Drake May did on Saturday, from what he ate for breakfast to all his throws to what he had for lunch and what he had for dinner to where he went after he left the facility, but we'll get pretty close. All right, gentlemen, let's switch gears here. We're about 25 minutes in to this week's show, and as I mentioned earlier, it is Showcase Week here in New England. Showcase Week kicked off yesterday with the Hockomock Showcase over at Milford High School. Adam, you were there. I want to start there, and then we're going to talk about Connecticut today. I want to start there, Adam. Just some thoughts on the Hockomock League Showcase. It was the first annual Hockomock League Showcase for athletes participating in Hockomock League schools.
Yeah, I thought it was really cool because you see guys there that you wouldn't necessarily see during the season. Like I didn't cover Canton once this year, but they had this kid, Rancy Jean Baptiste. Wait, let me make sure I got that right. Yeah, Rancy Jean Baptiste. class of 2026. One of the Canton coaches there said he's 6'2", 260, and he doesn't look he looks like he's 225. Like, it's amazing how this kid moves. Now, there were a lot of one-on-ones, and that's where he really shined. And he beat his first move usually beat whoever was trying to block him. Um, with time, he's going to have to develop more secondary moves because the one rep he did lose, they cut off that first move and stood him up a little bit. But he was really impressive. And again, he's a 3.9, low 4 GPA, and he's going to have tons of opportunities at the next level with grades like that. And he's a really good football player too. I'm really excited to see him again this season, see his junior film. But there are other guys like the kid Ben Angelini from Foxborough, really nice looking player. I think he ran like a 4.56 in one of his attempts, and they had laser timing there, so it wasn't like their guys with the stopwatches, which you can sometimes get. Like, people always say the conversion for that is 0.24 more with a stopwatch. But Angelini ran well. A lot of the KP guys ran well. Andrew LaPlante did a great job out there. I think in not just agility drills, but in the 40 as well. I forget what his time was, but he ran very well. Again, like, we're gonna come into this season like KP has legitimately 6 starting caliber running backs at least, based off who they had last year. It's gonna be really fun to watch that turn out. If you can play defense, I think you'll probably play defense. You can't give them all that many guys. But just KP and everybody I talked to was like so impressed with what KP has got going right now. Whether it's the regular season against Hockomock teams or the postseason in Division Two, they just really impressed everybody there. I talked to Ricky Santos, the UNH coach, um, and he just talked about how great it is to have an event like this, and how he's going to be going to, or how UNH coaches will be going to a bunch of these other um, showcases, and it's just great. It's great to see all those coaches, all those kids. They're all getting a great amount of exposure. See, there's nothing that can replace. Like, you can watch somebody on film, but you guys know this. Like, when you talk to a coach, like, when you see a guy on film, that's great, but that's just the first step in a lot of these. For a lot of these guys, they want to see these guys in person, how they move up close, and this allows coaches to get that firsthand, knowledge of these players, and it's really cool to see. Like, you saw, I mean, especially when you see a kid do well, and then the college coach will go up to the high school coach and ask about him, and they'll exchange information, and it's just really cool. So I thought, like, there's a ton of talent in the Hockomock. There's a ton of talent at these prep schools. There's a ton of talent in the Catholic Conference. Ton of talent in the North one that's happening later. I just think it's a great thing that these are all getting rolling. I mean, like, it's such a cool tradition to start, and I think it's going to help all these kids get more looks. And look, I remember, like, listen, 20, 25 years ago, there was a chance a kid would get overlooked, but now with Huddle and how quick it is to make one of those highlight films, and with these showcases, I don't see kids really slipping through the cracks. I mean, these kids are getting a ton of opportunities, and it's so great to see.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think it's become a necessity. I know that in speaking to a couple of the coaches around the league, that they felt that public schools needed to get with the times and start doing these showcases, because you're not just showcasing your kids for college coaches, but you're also showing your kids that, hey, we're willing to do what it takes to help get you recruited. I think the knock on public school coaches to a certain degree in recent years has been, well, if a kid stays at your school, it's great that he's going to get to play with his buddies, play for his hometown. And yes, that's a great feeling on a Friday night. But are you going to help them get recruited? Can you help them get into school, play college football, and get an education? And I think we've seen more and more public school kids in recent years now flee to private schools. They're not even going to Catholic schools as much anymore. They're going to private schools now because they have a better opportunity to get recruited. It can be more about them and what they put on film. And I think that if the financial aid and the package is there and it makes sense financially, I think that a lot of young men that are upper echelon talented type players, they have a decision to make now every offseason. Do I stay or do I go? And I think that the public school coaches recognize that. And they recognize that in order to keep these guys in your program, you're going to need to offer them more than just an opportunity to play. You're going to have to help them get recruited. You're going to have to bring college coaches through the door. You're going to have to do different things to sell the program on them and recruit them to stay now. So you're not just helping them get recruited by college coaches, but you're also recruiting them to stay. And I think that that's vitally important. And look, let's not kid ourselves, right? The game has changed in college football now. It's a transfer portal driven game. It's harder to get recruited as a high school kid, but showcases like this, if nothing else, they help you. Okay, if you're a kid that's a really good player that might kind of be flying under the radar, a showcase like this could benefit you immensely. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, our Tony Catalina was down in Connecticut today. He stopped by Choate, Rosemary Hall. He stopped by Cheshire Academy. He also went to St. Thomas More and Avon Old Farms. All of those programs have a terrific amount of talent. They also have a bunch of guys that have already committed. For example, Will Black is one of the guys that comes up. Of course, Matty Augustine, who was at Brunswick. Unfortunately, we weren't able to get down there and see Coach McGillicuddy today, but he's already committed. He's another offensive lineman that's committed to Notre Dame. You've got him. You've got a bunch of guys at the programs that Tony went to today. CJ Bell, a Mansfield kid at St. Thomas More. He's got multiple offers. Tony was able to talk with him. And, of course, Tony tonight is over at Springfield Central. They have their showcase night tonight. They have one of the best young skill groups in the entire region. They have a bunch of guys that could be potentially garnering Power 4 and FBS offers here in the coming weeks, months, and years. So certainly these showcase days, that there's a lot that goes into this. And again, I know a lot of people will say, well, this is private schools have been doing this for a while, but John Hooley, 2 years ago, head coach at Avon Old Farms, John really brought it to the forefront. Okay. And I know that a lot of other people want to take credit for this, but I'm going to give a lot of it to John because John brought it to the forefront. I had him on last week. John is a champion of the game in New England. He is a proponent of the game. He does what he does to support the game. Okay. The other thing is he educates coaches, whether you're a public, private, Catholic, it doesn't matter. He educates coaches on the recruiting process, and he brings coaches up to speed on any changes when it comes to recruiting in the NCAA. So, I think that these show day, these showcase days have a lot of value for the players and the coaches to a degree, but I think it's more than that. I think there's value there for New England football. And I think that what these showcase days have done the last couple of years is they have showed that there's talent up here. You've started to see the influx of the Power 5 and the Group of 5 coaches coming in here, but now they're coming in here on a year-to-year basis, whereas before they might only come here if there was one of those years where you had a handful of elite guys that they wanted to recruit. Now they're here every year. And, of course, tomorrow it's going to be Showcase Day in Massachusetts, as I mentioned. Kevin's going to be at Dexter Southfield and Belmont Hill. Adam's going to be at St. Seb's. We're also going to be at Tabor. We're also going to be at Milton Academy. And Jake Hamilton is going to be at BB&N tomorrow night. So, again, these Showcase Days are big for high school kids in New England and Massachusetts. And we want to make sure we do our part as the leading authority, if you will, on football in New England. That's how we view ourselves. We want to do our part to make sure that we're covering these Showcase Days. Stone, I think the last time you said anything was about 20 minutes ago. You got anything on these Showcase Days, or are you sitting there watching the Celtics out of the corner of your eye?
No, I do, and it's the national attention is what gets me now. You got ESPN doing stories on this. you got Rivals doing stories on this.
Yeah.
It's blowing
Crazy.
up, and it's only 2 years old. So it's only going to get
This is
bigger.
the third year of
Yeah, right.
them
But
doing
like,
it.
and under the national microscope, it's the second year. So, look, there's going to be what 150 coaches, patrolling the Connecticut, Massachusetts region these next 2 days, and you guys both hit it. They wouldn't have been here otherwise, unless they had a reason to. So, that's the coolest part to me about this is the national attention that it's getting. If you remember, Kirk Herbstreit, tweeted about it and talked about it last year as well. No one is more recognized in college football than him. So the national attention on New England is my favorite part about it. And just in terms of tomorrow, the two I'm going to be at, there's some major names there. At Dexter Southfield, you have Hardy Watts, who's been just recruited heavily by maybe every program in the freaking country. I think. I mean, I feel like he's talked to literally everybody. And Linnell Hall, sorry. I don't want to screw his name up too. St. Sebastian's, you got Dom Funk, Belmont Hill, Tommy Ruppely. Like some of these names are major names around the country right now, and I'm not sure they get the recognition without these show days.
Yeah, it's cool. I mean, the coolest thing to me that everybody are the people that come to these things. Like, this is it's just a big deal. And I love that these kids are getting recruited, getting seen. And you talk to these coaches that come to these things, they'll say, all right, well, Massachusetts might not have as many, FBS prospects, but the ones they do have are really good, and so that's what I love hearing from these coaches is that it's worth coming up here. They wouldn't come up here if the talent wasn't good, but they're coming up here to see like some really major, studs out there, and it's really cool to see.
And just to that point, these are major colleges like Michigan, Penn State, Bama, Georgia. Like the elite of the elite are coming out here to see this talent now. And I don't know if that's the case even 10 years ago.
No, but I also think it speaks of the job that, and I praised the public school coaches earlier, but I do think we need to praise the private school coaches as well as the Catholic school coaches, because particularly the private school coaches, they're bringing in talent now from other parts of the world. It's not just other parts of the country anymore. I mean, there are guys coming from Canada to play in these programs. You have these international programs that are helping guide young men from other parts of the world to come here and play at these schools. And I think that that's an important part of it. So they're not just recruiting guys that are from here, born and raised here. They're recruiting guys that have come to these schools to get a great education, play high school football, and then get recruited. And so I think that my point in bringing that up is that the talent base has expanded in New England. It's no longer just guys that are from here. And Adam, I want to come back to yesterday in the Hockomock showcase. You mentioned that I believe I was told there was about 50 schools there. Is that right?
I think the number I put in the story was 37.
37. Okay.
Yeah.
And a lot of those were, of course, FBS schools, which I think, again, if you're a public school showcase, if you can get the local FBS schools there, even if you can get a couple of the Ivy League schools, if you can get Maine, UNH, URI to show up, Stonehill, Sacred Heart, CCSU, Merrimack, that's Division I football. If you have a guy that could play at that level, there's a chance that they could get money or a full scholarship to play there. So, I mean, again, I think oftentimes you get bogged down in, man, I wish that Penn State and Notre Dame and Alabama and Georgia came to our showcase, but they're not going to come if you don't have guys that can play at that level. But if you have guys that can play D1 football potentially, other schools will come. And I think that that's the important part of it here. And as you mentioned, Adam, we're going to see more of these. May is going to become showcase month, and this is only the beginning. I think you're going to see more and more of these showcases popping up, and I think that they're important and they have value. And, of course, you still have camp season coming up as well. June is camp month. You have the Bone. You have the New England Elite Camp. Of course, you have Mike McCarthy and his M2 quarterback camp at Stonehill. So we're kind of carving out a nice little niche here where May is showcase month, June is camp month. July is, take a break for about 3 weeks, month, and
No,
then
7
football
on 7.
starts, and then
July,
that's Kevin Stone.
July-
Kevin
I
was gonna
Stone's
say,
season.
BC has 7-on-7 the end
I
of
was
June.
going to say, right, July is 7-on-7 month. So,
yeah.
yeah, it's also the beginning of Kevin Stone bitching season about how football
100%.
is starting. And
But one more thing on these things too, coaches are now sending film out of all of these things. So even if a coaching staff can't get there and they are interested in a player, these are now being filmed and you can see everything. So I'm not sure that even that was the case when they originally started. It was, well, if you can't make it, you can't make it. Now you've got film going on of all these kids too. So they're doing it the right way across the board.
yeah, and real quick before, I do want to say this. As much as we'd like to call July 7-on-7 month, there's 7-on-7s going on right now.
I know.
And I'm not a fan of that. I'm not a fan of the spring 7-on-7 leagues. I've been on record as saying that. I'm not a fan, and that might ruffle a couple feathers. I don't give a shit. I'm just being honest. The truth is, there's a fine line there. We don't want to burn kids out. We for years in the football community, we complained about these other sports making kids play year round. Let's not turn into that. I know that we want to keep up with the Joneses and make sure that our guys are lifting and preparing for the football season, but let's not burn them out. That's all I'm saying on that.
Yeah, I do think going back to the showcases that I remember, as recent as 10 years ago, even closer, that coaches from here were frustrated with the lack of opportunities that their kids were getting. And they just said, "Oh, we want to do this. We want to do this." People have been talking about doing these showcases for a while now. And I know Dana Olson was quick to mention how that they did a showcase in 2016 at Millis. But again, it's more opportunities for these kids. It's a chance for these coaches to see these kids in person, see how they run, see how they move. And I think it's just a really great thing that this is all happening. And it's really, you're right. A lot of credit has to go to John Julio on this one.
And Adam, just to that point too, the on-field stuff is one thing, but how many times have we heard a Don Brown or a Bill O'Brien talk about the relationship building?
Yeah.
Like, you need to know these kids off the field too. Well, what better way than June? If you're going to recruit them for however long, you get to go talk to them, not only talk to their coaches, but see how they interact with teammates in this setting and all that too. So I think that's a massive part of it, is the off-field portion as well.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. That is a big part of it. Real quick, our Tony Catalina just tweeted out about a guy that you've been talking about here recently, Adam, and that is class of 27 Springfield Central running back Isaiah Rogers. Tony just tweeted out. He says he thinks he's going to be a star based on what he's seen in his workout. He already holds offers from BC, UConn, UMass, Syracuse, and Mississippi State. As Tony just said, and I agree with him, you got to think this is the beginning for him. I mean, he's probably going to surpass 20-plus offers here in the next couple of years. I mean, again, put that into perspective, okay? He's class of 27.
But here's the thing about that is a year ago, before all this, before when he was an 8th grader, Steve Martin, as we all know, was the great Steve Martin. He told me about this kid. I don't know.
He's trying to make a joke there. Were you going to say that wild and crazy?
No. Oh God, that's probably yeah. I'm sure he hears that 1,000 times a day. But what he said, this Rogers kid was going to be a Power 5 back. I didn't expect it to be this soon because he really doesn't have a lot of. I mean, he played varsity this past season, but it's not like he was the main back for most of the year, and now he's going to be, and he's got good size. He's fast. He's somebody with quick twitch muscles. He's just a really good football player, and like Tony said, this is just the beginning for him. He already has an SEC offer. How often does Mississippi State come to Massachusetts for running backs, or for anybody? But I mean, so that tells you just how special this kid is, and they expect big things from Rogers going forward.
And if anybody knows, it's Steve. I mean, he's as well tuned into the Springfield football scene and Western Mass football as anybody in the state and in the region. So if he knows, he knows.
He does.
Speaking of Springfield Central, just to kind of use that as a segue, a couple of former Springfield Central alum transferred over the weekend. Joe Griffin, former Springfield Central standout and Boston College wide receiver, has a new home. He is transferring to the University of Wisconsin to play for Luke Fickell and the Badgers. And last night we found out that another former Springfield Central standout, offensive lineman Jayden Bass, is transferring from Syracuse to UConn. I think this is a terrific pickup for Jim Mora and his staff. Gordy Samus, offensive line coach and offensive coordinator, recruited him. Gordy is a terrific recruiter, so I'm not surprised that he was able to land Jayden. But just some thoughts on those guys. Kevin, I want to start with you. Just some thoughts on Joe Griffin transferring to Wisconsin to play for Luke Fickell and offensive coordinator Phil Longo.
So look, it's his BC career ended very strangely. You know, we've talked about this off the record for I don't know how long. There's rumors all over the place about why he's no longer an Eagle, and obviously we're not going to get into it, but it's a shame it ended that way because I thought he could have been good in this offense. Having said that, I'm not sure they're going to miss him. The receiving room is just very, very deep. I think he can be good there. It's a chance for him to showcase his talent on a big stage and in some pretty big venues. And ultimately, what's he got? 2 years left still? 3 years? So he's got plenty of time.
He's got 3 years to play 2 in essence.
Yeah. So like you have plenty of time now to, I don't know if rebuild your stock is the right word, but he can make an impact there. So I'm glad he found a good home for him. And I wish him nothing but the best, but the way it ended here is it leaves a weird taste in a lot of BC fans' mouth.
Yeah, I think Joe's super talented. He's one of the most talented pure receivers I've ever covered. Some of the guys I've seen who are great receivers are sort of like not that once you get to the next level. But I really feel like Joe can tear it up at Wisconsin. I think he's an excellent player. I think Jayden's a good player too. Sometimes just a change in venue can be a good thing for guys. And I think it's funny, like I feel like transferring now is the norm. And it's no longer the what's the word I'm looking for? I forget, but
an anomaly.
An anomaly, yeah, exactly. It's no longer an anomaly. I feel like this is normal. It used to be, oh, what happened? He transferred. Now it's just like, oh yeah, a lot of these guys play at 2, sometimes 3 schools or more. But I think both of these guys can make an impact at their new places.
Although I will say, not to get off the topic too much, I do think one of the consequences of playing in multiple schools is I do think it'll affect their draft stock if they have aspirations to play in the NFL. I mean, I've talked to people around the league that don't love the guys that are bouncing around. There's some organizations that are placing a lot of value on guys that have played in 1 or 2 schools. There's a lot of people around the league that are not fans of the guys that are jumping around. It says a lot about them.
No, not to interrupt, but is that just because, and I assume this is it, you want to see a guy kind of go through trials and tribulations and stick it out? Yeah,
exactly what it is. They want to see him go through some adversity and come out on the other side. They want to see that they're willing to earn their spot, that they're willing to work to get what they want. It sends a message that if you don't get what you want, then you'll go to the next place. And if they give you what you want, great. If they don't, then you'll go to the next place. I think when you look at some of the guys in this year's draft, there were guys that bounced around a bunch. Keaton Slovis, the quarterback, he didn't get drafted. I think there's some validity to that. I think there's teams around the league that are looking at this and they're saying, why would I draft a guy and invest in them financially and give them this opportunity if as soon as they encounter any kind of adversity that what their transfer pattern tells me is that they're ready and willing to move on to the next place if they're not getting what they want. So I think that does matter. But I digress nonetheless. I think in the case of Joe Griffin, I think it's a good landing spot. I don't know if it's the best landing spot. And I'm not in Joe's shoes. I'm not his dad. I'm not here to advise him. I think Phil Longo is a really good offensive coach. Drake May had his best year at North Carolina playing for him 2 years ago. I think that Coach Longo can get a lot out of Joe. I do think that if Joe was probably willing to wait a little longer, and even though it's tough to sit in the portal for a long period of time, I think if he was willing to sit in the portal for a little longer, he might have had a little bit of a better opportunity come his way. But nonetheless, he and his family did what they thought was best for him. As far as Jayden is concerned, I think UConn's a tremendous landing spot. Going to get to play for a good offensive line coach and Coach Samus, who's also going to be his offensive coordinator. I think UConn is a place where Jayden can play right away. You bring back Valentine Sen, you bring back Chris Thornton, you bring back Chase Lunt, but those guard spots, you lose Haynes, you lose Noel. I mean, there's an opportunity to play there. So, I think for me, he'll have a shot to play right away, and he's got 3 years of eligibility. I don't think you could have asked for a better landing spot in many ways for him. And I think it's going to be good for his family too, because it's going to be closer. They're going to be able to watch him play. And, we've all gone down there and seen those UConn facilities. I mean, it's an easy sell. Jim Mora is an easy sell. I mean, who wouldn't want to play for Jim? He's awesome. The NFL pedigree. Aren't many coaches around here other than maybe Bill O'Brien that are on the same level as Jim Mora that can help you play on Sundays and get the most out of you. So I think that Jayden landing at UConn is a terrific landing spot for him. Final thoughts here, gentlemen, before we wrap up. Again, we're going to continue Showcase Days tomorrow when we visit 6 schools in Massachusetts.
I think that'll be great. And don't look now, but the football season is not that far off. We're in month.
What are you trying to? Are you trying to encourage Stone to commit seppuku?
No, I'm just saying. We got real football coming just a couple months. So we're ramping up now. Showcase, 7-on-7 camps, everything like that. It's gonna be a lot of fun.
Yeah, let me get to WAC season first, but 2 for me, real quick. Boston Renegades are 2-0. Boston Renegades are 2-0. They're won by, I think, 50 and 70 or 70 and 50. They're still dominant, even without quarterback Allison Cahill, who finally retired. Hoping to get a story with her sometime in the near future. She's arguably one of the best football players, men or women ever, just given her resume. And then David Andrews talked last week as well. And it's very important for this team to have him back. 2 things he said, which were very funny. He went to work out at his wife's old high school in Georgia, and high school kids were chirping him for some of his workout routine. And then a UPS driver was delivering something to his house and said, "I thought you'd look bigger." And it sort of sparked him that he did want to come back. And he said that desire is still there. And I think he's a huge piece for this team this year, mostly from a leadership standpoint, and especially for Drake May. Did it work out with Mac? No. But Andrews talked about learning some lessons with a young quarterback that he can now apply to Drake May. So I just don't want people to kind of take for granted having David Andrews here still. He's a huge piece of this franchise, and he wants to be one of the guys that kind of bridges the new era and the old era as well.
Yeah, and I couldn't get over how good he was last year. It was a trying season. They go 4-13, but he was a consummate professional. Each and every game, he would get up to the podium after the game, wouldn't even change, would come right out and meet with us and talk about the game. And he answered every question. I mean, and he is – it's not hyperbole to say that he is a pleasure to cover. He is a terrific, terrific dude. And he gets it. He's a great guy to be around. He's a class act. He's a pro, a lot like Matthew Slater. That's what made Slate great. It's what made covering him great. Just a terrific human being. You would not think, being around Matt and David, that they were professional athletes. They don't treat people different. They treat everybody the same. What you see is what you get. They're originals. They're face value with you. They're not going to sit there and big time you or turn around and look the other way when you are trying to talk to somebody in the locker room during media availability. They will give you their time. They're always generous with it. And like I said, David's a consummate pro, but so was Slade. He was terrific to cover. I mean, and all 3 of us have had the opportunity to cover Matthew, and he's great to be around. I'm glad to see, by the way, that he's staying with the organization and he's going to work hand in hand with Gerard to help turn the Patriots around. I think it's fantastic. Mass Pirates dropped to 5-2 after a bad loss to the Iowa Barnstormers over the weekend in Iowa, 42-34. Pirates got off to a pretty good start, had a bye week last week, but they've lost 2 of their last 3. They return home this weekend, so they'll have an opportunity to come back home where they're going to take on NAS, the Northern Arizona Wranglers. So should be a good one. They are going to play on Saturday. It is a 6 or a 105, I should say. They usually play in the evening, but is a 105 kickoff on Saturday at the Tsongas Arena. All right, gentlemen, great job as always. Let's do this again next week.
All right, take it easy.
All right. Well, that'll do it for this week's episode of the New England Football Show. For Kevin Stone and Adam Kirchen, I'm John Sarianides. We'll be back with you next week. Till then, stay safe, and as always, peace.